Data center stocks saw a huge rise in popularity in 2024. This had many reasons, but the major one was the quick rise of AI tools and the necessity to train them. But the increasing need of many companies for offsite data management and cloud storage has also contributed to this trend. This rise has led to sometimes very lofty valuations that have come down this week a bit after the announcement of DeepSeek has scared many investors in US big tech stocks. But this trend is all but over. And as a physics engineer and former IT guy that is now working in the management of a semiconductor manufacturing company, this is a topic that is close to my heart and that I've been following for quite a while. So in today's video, I want to go over 3 not so obvious companies that are in a great position to benefit from the overall data center growth in 2025 after the recent crash. And because your time is valuable, these 3 companies are the rack and cooling solution provider Vertiv Holdings, the manufacturer of optoelectronic components Coherent, and the controller and network adapter designer Marvell Technologies. But before we go into the details of each of these companies, let me first show you why I think that this market will still perform strongly in 2025 despite the already very good year 2024 and the fear of DeepSeek. Over the last 15 years, the data demand has increased by roughly 100 times. This growth was driven by not only one, but several different trends over the years. It started with the growing adoption of social media and cloud storage in 2010 and shifted to video streaming from around 2016. And since the release of ChatGPT to the public in early 2022, the current major growth driver since then is, surprise, surprise, AI. With this, there has been more data created in the last 3 years than in all history combined, according to the IDC. That has resulted in an average annual growth rate of nearly 36% over this period. So this trend is nothing new, and the recent discussion and the huge investments from big tech in AI infrastructure have just pushed this topic into the spotlight of the public. Between January and August of last year, Microsoft, Google, Meta and Amazon alone have invested $125 billion in building up and running AI data centers. And these plans have not changed now. But this is only half of the picture. Because when we look into the details of where this money actually goes, we see that roughly half of it is spent on AI chips like GPUs and such, which is good news for Nvidia, while the other half is spent on other AI spend. This includes the infrastructure like server racks, cooling solutions, network hardware, and even data management tools and software. And on top of that, we also have the operating costs, shown here in the much smaller blue bars. This is split into training costs in dark blue and inference costs, which is the operation of these AI models on their servers in light blue. So a lot of these recent investments have been spent on the infrastructure to operate and train these AI models. And there is no end of this trend in sight. McKinsey has developed 3 different scenarios for the data center growth until 2030. Their mid-range scenario shows a CAGR of 22%, while the upper-range scenario even indicates a growth of 27%. And while this is definitely a great growth, remember that it was close to 36%, almost 10% higher in the last 15 years. For the coming year, Morgan Stanley expects that our top 4 spenders, Amazon, Meta, Microsoft and Alphabet, could more than double their capex and spend a combined $300 billion alone in 2025. We don't know how much money they will spend on data infrastructure, but if the last year has been an indication, I would think that it will be again roughly half of their overall capex. And one of the biggest beneficiaries of this spending could be my first pick today, Vertiv Holdings. Vertiv is a global leader in critical digital infrastructure solutions that provides cooling solutions, especially liquid cooling solutions, IT management systems, power supplies, and professional racks and enclosures for server clusters and data centers. Vertiv helps businesses to optimize their performance and ensure safe operations in their data centers. With their global team of experts, the company delivers tailored solutions to meet the demands of digital infrastructure. Whether it comes to enhancing efficiency or building up new data centers, Vertiv plays a key role in supporting their customers with these tasks. Over the last 5 years, the company could severely outperform the S&P 500 by 10 times and deliver over 1,100% total returns to their investors. And they did also follow this trend last year when they could deliver total returns of 177% in 1 year alone. The company is operating globally, but their main markets are the US and Americas, where they generate with 55% more than half of their sales. The biggest segment they sell to is, if you haven't guessed it by the title of the video, the data center market. Here, they generate around 65% of their revenue in their two biggest segments, the power management segment and the thermal management segment. And they even claim to be the market leader in both of these segments. These two segments are also the reason why I find the company especially interesting. As you know, AI servers consume a lot of energy. This power has to first get from the street into the data center and from there be distributed between the different racks and chips in the end. At each of these steps, the power needs to be switched, transformed and distributed with high accuracy and speed. And because we are talking about very sophisticated and expensive high-end hardware here, it is important to use high-quality switches and good power management to keep it working properly around the clock and not damage or destroy the precious chips. So, such high-quality switches and power infrastructure is essential in keeping the maintenance and replacement costs of these data centers in check. And because they use so much energy, they can get quite hot. In fact, they can get so hot that traditional air cooling can't keep up anymore. From the total energy demand of these data centers, around 30% is just spent on cooling alone. And McKinsey estimates that with air cooling, it is possible to cool servers with the densities of up to 50 kilowatts per rack. That is barely enough for using these AI models, but definitely not for training them. And because the liquid extracts the heat directly from the electrical components, the power usage effectiveness, or PUE, which is a measure of how efficiently a data center uses energy, is improved by up to 10% with liquid cooling. And even though the hardware is their main source of revenue, Vertiv is also providing commissioning services including the design, installation, integration and even project management of such data centers. They also offer monitoring and lifecycle services to guarantee a quick support and long lifetime of its hardware. So they have quite a unique niche here with their products and services. And this has helped them to benefit nicely from the spending on data centers and grow quickly last year. With this, they could grow their net sales in 2024 by 14% year over year, their free cash flow by 23%, while at the same time also improving their operating margins by almost 4%. And the outlook for next year even points to a further acceleration of these numbers. For 2025, they expect the sales to grow by 16% to 18% and their operating margins by further 2%. When we look back at the last 3 years, the growth of the company is indeed quite impressive. They could grow their revenue by 15.5% per year, their free cash flow by 84.2% and their EPS by almost 57%. And the company projects that they can keep up roughly this growth until 2029. And at the moment, they are well on track to reach their goals. At the moment, the long-term debt to EBITDA ratio is a bit over 3, which is right on the border of what I still find okayish for my investments. But they have diluted their shareholders in the last 4 years by 2.35% annually. Luckily, they have turned this trend around already and have started to buy back shares in November 2024. And they plan to continue doing this over the next few years. As we can see in the slim green bar here, they are also paying a dividend with a yield of, hold on tight, whooping 0.1%. And their plan is to double this until 2029. So yeah, while this might not be the yield that dividend investors are looking for, at least the growth is quite nice. Vertiv has started to pay a dividend back in 2020, but only grow it in 2023. So we don't yet have a long history to look back at. But with only 5.3% cash flow payout ratio, this is also still very low. What is not too low even after the sell-off earlier this week is the valuation of the company. They have a PE ratio of 55 compared to the sector median of 21, an EV to EBITDA ratio of 35 compared to the sector with 12.3, and a price to cash flow of 42.75 compared to barely 17. So all of this looks quite expensive. But when we use the PEG ratio and put this valuation in context with its growth, the picture changes all of a sudden. Because here, the PEG ratio of Vertiv is quite a bit lower compared to the sector. So if they can reach their growth goals, and everything points in this direction right now, this admittedly high valuation might still be okay. My second company today, and my favorite one out of these three, is Coherent. Coherent Holding is a global leader in laser-based and photonics solutions. They provide cutting-edge technology that is tailored to a wide range of industries, including data centers. Their advanced optical and photonic systems play a critical role in enabling high-speed, high-capacity data transmission for modern data centers. With products such as optical transceivers, wavelength management solutions, and other fiber optic components, they are in a prime spot to benefit from the need to work with and transmit huge amounts of data very quickly. In the last 5 years, these products have helped them to outperform the market and generate 126% total returns. Last year has been similar, with Coherent returning 66.2% compared to the 23.7% of the S&P. Coherent actually has a whole range of very interesting and cutting-edge products and technologies. From their whole plethora of different high-power laser systems for cutting, marking, drilling and welding, over special and rare metals that are used for these optical semiconductors and lasers like lithium or selenium, up to special semiconductors like indium phosphide that is used for high-speed optical transceivers. So they are highly vertically integrated and have many steps of their production process in their own hands. Yeah, this is all pretty interesting and so. But we are not here today to talk about lasers. We're here today to talk about data centers, right? Actually, such lasers, although with a lower power, are indeed used for data centers. Here, Coherent uses this deep vertical integration that is the core of their business to combine advanced optical components like lenses, filters and isolators that are made out of these special materials into optical transceivers. This is not so much in the spotlight of the public, but still one of the most important components for data centers and modern communication in total. These are used in connecting the different racks in a data center, as well as for long-distance communication that is coming out of the data centers into the world. And because AI and machine learning has vastly increased the amount of data going in and out of data centers and the amount of data that needs to be processed, the demand is expected to only go up from here. Today, Coherent is already reaching transmission speeds of 800 gigabits per second and is already going into the 1.6 terabits per second. This is not possible with regular electrical data transmissions. So these high-end optical transceivers are necessary to achieve these high speeds. Coherent is active here with their networking business segment, which generates 57% of their revenue and is therefore their most important segment. And according to this data from Signal AI, with these products, they are the market leader in all but the telecom sector. This data is from 2023 and I could unfortunately not find any newer data that was not hidden behind a paywall. But from what I saw in my research, I think it is safe to assume that they are still a top player here, if not the number one. The company as we know it today was formed in 2022 when 226 Semiconductor acquired the former Coherent and formed the new company by keeping the name Coherent. This acquisition has had quite an impact on their balance sheet and growth in the last years. Overall, their 5-year growth was not too bad, with an annual revenue growth of 29% and a free cash flow growth of 24.4%. But the EPS is negative since the acquisition, so we can't calculate the average growth rate here. This is because the goodwill and with it the depreciation has been increased since then, which has pushed their earnings per share down. But their gross margin is still on a very similar level as before the merger and in fact has even increased a bit since then. So this is not due to a bad business performance, but mostly an effect from the merger. And when we take a closer look at the revenue growth from the last quarters, we see that it has first of all increased steadily and second, was predominantly driven by growth in the networking segment. While the other segments have been going mostly sideways, the networking segment could grow with 62% year over year. But unfortunately, the EPS was not the only metric that was affected by the acquisition. The company is also quite leveraged since then, with a long-term debt to EBITDA of currently 6.4 times, and they did also issue new shares every year since then. This has pushed the share dilution to quite a high level of over 10% per year over the last 5 years. And most of these shares have actually been issued in the last 3 years alone. But the company has already started to work on both of these metrics. In their last quarterly report, they reported to have paid down $118 million in debt, improved the EPS by 94% to only minus 0.04 cent, and even reduced the outstanding shares a bit. So the trend is definitely pointing upwards again. For the time being, the company is not paying a dividend, which unfortunately eliminates them from the watch lists of many dividend investors. But that also leaves the company with their full cash flow to keep reducing their debt and investing it back into their growth. And despite the nice growth that they could show last year and also expect for next year, the valuation is still quite low. The PE ratio might not look low with 942 on a forward-looking basis, but the reason for that is the currently still negative EPS. And that we can even calculate this forward PE means that the EPS should slide into the positive range again in the coming months. The EV to EBITDA and price to cash flow are both lower than the sector median, and especially the price to cash flow looks with 15.3 quite cheap for such a tech company. But the nicest looking metric is the PEG ratio of 0.5. Again, this basically puts the PE ratio in relation to the expected growth. And a value of under 1 indicates that the company might be cheap when considering the growth, which is definitely the case with a PEG of only 0.5. The sector median here sits quite a bit higher with a PEG of 1.84. And for a mature tech company that shows the growth that Coherent does, this is actually an amazing value. Before we come to my last pick, if you like the video so far and find it interesting, it would be amazing if you hit the like button and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on my next analysis. As a small channel, this really helps me out a lot, so thank you very much. And now, last but not least, my third company today is Marvell Technologies. Marvell is the company with the second biggest market share in custom ASIC chips after Broadcom. They integrate the latest technologies across different segments to provide high-performance infrastructure products for AI, cloud, and 5G applications. But they also provide components like Ethernet switches or storage controllers that are purpose-built for the data center and enterprise market. With a focus on co-innovation, Marvell collaborates closely with top cloud and AI providers like NVIDIA, TSMC or Amazon to develop tailored and high-performance solutions for them. With this approach, they did produce 335% total gains for their investors in the last 5 years. And even after the recent dip, still 52% in the last 12 months. So it has outperformed the S&P 500 easily in both timeframes. There are actually 2 things I find particularly interesting about Marvell. The first thing is that Marvell has many products for different jobs and data centers. They provide the ASIC chips that are used for the high-power computing, the Ethernet switches to connect the servers in one rack and also different racks in one data center, and they have one of the best storage controllers and storage accelerators on the market to access stored data as quickly as possible. And all of these products have a direct impact not only on the performance, but also the operating efficiency of these data centers by being highly energy efficient and, in the case of ASICs, being specifically designed for certain tasks and therefore quicker to perform them. Some analysts even believe that ASICs might replace the currently used GPUs in data centers altogether. That is actually also why ASICs have largely taken over GPUs for professional crypto mining in commercial farms already. And while I don't believe that ASICs will entirely replace GPUs for AI applications in the coming years, their market share is still expected to grow significantly. And with Marvell winning market shares in this ASIC market, mostly against Broadcom, they are in a good position to benefit from this. And the strategy that Marvell uses to gain market share here is actually also the second point I like about them. It is the fact that they are not trying to do this alone. Rather, they are cooperating with other big tech players and listening closely to what they need. For example, just in December last year, they announced a partnership with Amazon on an unprecedented scale. Even though they already had a strategic partnership, they signed a 5-year contract to provide and develop products that will be used in Amazon's cloud infrastructure. And we are not only talking about ASICs here. We are talking about their full range of products, from signal processors, cables, interconnectors, Ethernet switches, and so on. This will not only be a great business for Marvell, but I would expect that they can also learn quite a bit from this collaboration to further enhance their products. And remember, this is only the most recent example from many similar partnerships that Marvell has. This approach has helped them to grow their revenue by 14.5% every year for the last 5 years and their free cash flow by 130% even. But their EPS is currently negative, the same as Coherent. And there are several reasons for this. First, the company has had several acquisitions in the last years which, similar to Coherent, pushed their depreciation costs up to almost 2 times the value from 2019. And second, when we look at the latest quarterly report where they show the revenue development by end market, all markets except the data center market are down right now. But here we also see that on a quarter-to-quarter basis, the trend has just changed and is pointing upwards again. In addition to this, they also had quite some restructuring costs to integrate these new acquisitions into their business and align their strategy more on the data center market. With these changes, they believe that they can increase their growth to 29% annually until 2028. And when we look at the non-GAAP metrics, where they actually exclude all these special effects and costs related to the acquisitions, they can actually show a small growth in EPS. These acquisitions had to be funded though, and the company has done this by taking on debt as well as issuing new shares. Their current long-term debt to EBITDA sits at 4.8 times, while they also diluted their shareholders by 5.5% per year over the last 5 years. The company is paying a very small dividend of 0.23%, and they have not grown this at all over the past 5 years. But the cash flow payout ratio is also quite low, with only 19%. And same as most other companies in this technology sector, Marvell is quite expensive right now. With their negative EPS, we can't give the PE value, but the EV to EBITDA and the price to cash flow are both on quite a high level, more than double the sector medians. But again, when we factor in the growth with the PEG ratio, it changes a bit. Here, the company is even slightly below the sector median, which again shows the growth perspective for them. So these are the 3 companies in the data center space that I find quite interesting right now. But this is only my opinion. What do you think? I would be really interested to hear your thoughts down in the comments below. And again, I am a physics engineer, not a financial advisor. So before investing, please do your own research and only use this video as a starting point for your own analysis. And if you're interested in other investment ideas and would like to know what's up with Seeking Alpha's top pick for 2025, I have a video right here where I go over the details of this very interesting small cap company. That being said, thank you so much for watching, guys, and see you in the next video.